On Tuesday, an overwhelming majority of the British Parliament rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal with the EU.
I hear the words that... I will come to other colleagues, but first of all, point of order, the Leader of the Opposition, Jeremy Corbyn.
The ayes to the right, 202. The noes to the left, 432.
So where does Britain go from there?
It is clear that the House does not support this deal, but tonight's vote tells us nothing about what it does support.
Businesses on both sides of Brexit see the exit from the single market as the main disadvantage, especially without any regulations or trade deals.
Business will suffer very much because you have to see that British-German trade, for example, is at 185 billion a year, and Germany has a surplus with Britain at about 45 billion a year. Germany will suffer more, of course, due to this fact.
There will be immediately the necessity of 10 million of new duty procedures and dealing with the regulations. And this will cost approximately several hundreds of millions of euro for German business.
Great Britain's economy will also suffer. Brexit is already having a negative effect. The CBI announced this week that Britain's financial sector has shrunk for the first time in 5 years. The management consultancy Ernst & Young predicts that banks will shift their $1 trillion investment value from Great Britain to mainland Europe. By Monday, the government has to explain how they're moving ahead. The nation is still divided. Parts of the population want to remain in the EU and are demanding a new referendum. When an Airbus takes off from the runway, a big chunk of the European Union takes off with it. An Airbus jet is a prime example of EU cooperation. The aviation group is located in Germany, France, Great Britain, and Spain. Production takes place across Europe. France has the largest operations with some 48,000 Airbus employees across different sites. Germany is in close second place with around 44,000 workers. In Spain, the aircraft manufacturer has 13,000 employees, and almost 11,500 people work for Airbus in Britain. British factories make the wings for Airbus. In addition, around 4,000 British companies supply parts to the aviation group. So what could happen in the event of a hard Brexit? Will Airbus still be able to manufacture in Great Britain? A no-deal Brexit would be bad for business there. In Britain, more than 100,000 people working for Airbus suppliers could be gravely affected. The effects would also be devastating for Airbus itself. Airbus maintains that the group has been working on contingency measures for a long time. In the short term, warehouses will be set up to stockpile the needed parts. But the plane maker may have to build new factories in the long run. Airbus says it's invested 15 million euros in preparing for a hard Brexit. But the real cost of Brexit is still up in the air. Detroit's auto show hasn't lost all its glamour, but it's certainly not the event it once was. GM chose to unveil its new Cadillac SUV, but many other luxury car makers, including BMW and Mercedes, skipped the event this year. This as the global car market contracts and uncertainty grows over the threat of U.S. tariffs.
We're in a transition in the industry. We've had a great run of strong car sales over the last decade or so. We're probably going to have a dip in the next couple of years. At the same time, the auto companies have to focus on today's business to generate profits so they can finance a future that's going to be very different.
Speaking of the future, one major car maker that is making an appearance in Detroit this year is Volkswagen. The car maker from Wolfsburg announced an alliance with U.S. auto giant Ford.
This year in particular at Detroit, we're looking forward to seeing what GAC is doing. In the past few years, they've had some pretty big displays at Detroit and have showed off their new car lineup. And this year, they're also going to be debuting a new SUV concept called the N-Trons. Now, this is a pretty big deal for GAC because they've said in recent years that 2019 is the year they want to start selling cars in the United States, and that they've been recruiting American auto dealers to help them do that.
At a time of heightened transatlantic tension, the bond could be politically as well as economically strategic. And in spite of the changes, there's one constant. The auto show is hoping for 800,000 visitors. The show will run until the 27th of January. Next year, the show won't take place in the winter, but in the summer. Visitors will be able to test drive vehicles, watch rallies and demonstrations. Volkswagen and Ford will be working together in the future, the companies announced at the Detroit Motor Show. At first, the alliance will be limited to developing vans and pickups. Later, self-driving and electric cars might be added. The industry is under pressure, with the economy cooling down on the one hand. On the other, companies need to invest heavily in new technologies. Industry experts say that other companies like GM and Honda are also teaming up on e-mobility projects. The former CEO of Nissan, Carlos Ghosn, is now losing his position as chairman of the board of Renault. Ghosn has been in pre-trial custody in Tokyo since November. He's accused of tax evasion and misappropriation of Nissan company funds. Nissan demands that Ghosn pay back 8 million euros. The U.S. ambassador in Germany, Richard Grenell, has threatened European companies with sanctions. This affects companies participating in the construction of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Nord Stream brings gas directly from Russia to the rest of Europe. A second pipeline is currently being built alongside the existing one. The U.S. has been criticizing Europe for becoming too dependent on Russian gas. The pipeline through the Ukraine is becoming less significant as a transit line. The World Economic Forum in Davos will take place this year without a U.S. delegation. U.S. President Donald Trump had already canceled days ago. Now no members of the government will be attending. Background is the government shutdown in the U.S. British Prime Minister Theresa May and French President Emmanuel Macron will also remain at home for political reasons. He's already lost 30% of the soy seed planted last year. Mario Justosia is just one of hundreds of Argentinian farmers affected by El Niño's heavy rain. Last year, crops failed due to drought. About an eighth of the soy planted in Argentina has already been damaged by the floods. And after that, a drought in 2018 already cut the country's soy output by around 30%. Hardly anyone still goes shopping extensively in the streets of Buenos Aires. People can only afford the bare essentials at the moment. Prices rise almost daily. It happens in very few countries in the world, and it's a very complicated issue. Here we live it every day. In general, prices adjust as the U.S. dollar moves. If the dollar rises, all prices will go up. But if the dollar goes down, nothing goes back down. Consumers are holding on to their money. No one knows how much longer the crisis will last. Owners of cafes and restaurants are being hit hard. Many customers have been staying home. It's a time of survival, nothing else. Just survive, the mantra of most people in Argentina today. People here hope that the situation will calm down. After all, the inflation rate is expected to go down by half this year to around 23%. Gasoline in Zimbabwe takes days to get and is now the most expensive in the world, costing $3.33 per liter. This for a nation where the majority lives in poverty. Inflation and shortages have returned to Zimbabwe, and with them, anger at the government.
$15, 2 liters of cooking oil, $15. 2 kg of sugar goes for $10. Enough is enough.
It's a grim outlook for President Emerson Mnangagwa, whose rise following the 37-year rule of Robert Mugabe suggested better times were ahead, or at least more stable ones. Markets reacted positively. Foreign lenders seemed willing to open their pocketbooks. But the economy's structural problems remain unresolved. State-owned enterprises and a massive public sector swell a budget propped up by debt. The central bank is overdrafting to pay the country's bills and relying on an electric currency due to the lack of hard cash. That's caused the actual value of the currency, Zimbabwe uses the US dollar, to plummet. The government needs to borrow more to increase cash reserves. Mnangagwa is busy making his case. He was in Moscow this week and is expected to attend the upcoming World Economic Forum in Davos. The port city has been dubbed Sri Lanka's new Dubai. The official name is the Colombo International Financial City, a special economic zone with its own business-friendly tax rules and regulations. It's praised by the country's leaders as a great achievement.
The city is a technological marvel and without doubt one of the most spectacular development projects this country will ever see.
An estimated 100 million cubic meters of sand were needed before construction could even start. Thousands of tons of sand were removed from Sri Lanka's coastlines to build for the new port city. But it comes at a hefty price for Sri Lanka. Local fishermen say it's destroying marine life and their livelihoods. The environmental damage is changing the region's ecosystem, and critics say that the excavated sand alone is worth more than double the project's entire budget of $1.4 billion. And that was your Business Week in Review.